Happy May and happy Asian American Pacific Islander Heritage Month, everyone. My name is Wei Baker. I'm currently Senior Director and Head of Marketing at Microsoft for Startups. Really excited to be here today and to spend time with all of you. Today's conversation is all around this topic of from AI to enterprise, lessons learned around how to effectively build, raise, and scale agentic AI startups that become enterprise and customer ready. And in light of AAPI month, I'm joined by two amazing AAPI voices in our community, Surojit and Cheryl, who bring really valuable perspective across both the founder and investor lens in thinking about this topic. What I'm hoping that we can do in this session today is make it more practical and real, what's actually working right now, what's hard, what founders should be thinking about when they're building and scaling. So let's go ahead and start with a quick round of introductions from our two guests today. Surojit, let's go ahead and start with you. Tell us about what you're building and what you're focused right now at Ema.
Thank you for inviting me here. I'm Surojit Chatterjee. I'm CEO and co-founder of Ema.ai. We build an AI employees, which are basically agentic workflows that help automate and augment companies, large enterprises, their workforce, particularly in the areas of HR, IT, customer support, and finance.
Amazing. Cheryl, would you like to share more about yourself and what you focus on at M12?
Sure. Thank you for having me. I love AAPI month. So I'm a managing partner at M12, which is Microsoft's early stage venture fund. M12 focuses on seed through Series B opportunities, usually writing somewhere between $3 to $10 million checks. At M12, I'm focused on application layer investments.
Thank you. All right, so before we jump in, I want to take a quick step back and level set on why this topic matters right now for our audience. So, we're seeing more and more startups today not only building great products, but needing to prove real value to enterprise customers early on in their journey, whether that's around AI adoption, cost efficiency, or driving measurable business impact. But at the same time, enterprises are actively looking to work with startups and they want innovation, they want speed, and there's oftentimes a gap in how these connect together and how this connection happens. So today's conversation is really about unpacking exactly that. What founders today should know, what enterprises today are actually looking for, and how we can bridge that gap in a way that leads to real long-term partnerships. So with that, let's dive right in, shall we? Cool. So first, to kick things off, Surojit, what's one early product or technical decision that helped you move from a strong demo to a true enterprise-ready solution for Ema?
Look, our the product we build is quite complex because we are sitting on top of every system of record in the enterprise, every data, making sense of that data, taking autonomous decisions, making dynamic plans. So the key decisions we made early on, one was we have to spend the effort to connect with hundreds of systems of records in a reliable way, in a reliable and secure way. So that actually really helped us scale very quickly and make our deployment really smooth and simple for large enterprises. So that's number one. I can go on, but I'll say maybe one more is we always imagined Emma to be an AI employee, which is a slightly provocative term was a provocative term when we started. No one else was using that. And now I see a lot of people have co-opted that term and uses it. The whole idea, though, is to think of this not as a traditional software, but really a partner to humans. So can it take human feedback? Can it adapt automatically, just like humans do? Can it remember feedback, right? And can it self-improve over time? And having that, like, I think the naming, it's not just about the naming, but the product kind of philosophy really helped us build something of lasting value.
That's really cool. And actually, this makes me think of a conversation I was having a couple of months ago with someone who was driving digital transformation on the enterprise side. And they were saying how they were thinking about the workforce and kind of their operating model of the future is they need kind of one learning and development agenda for their human employees and one learning and development agenda for their agentic employees. So I think that's so cool that that's kind of like the direction that we're heading towards slash that we're already in today with solutions like Emma. And I'm curious as you talk about this, Surojit, in those early days of thinking about like how you were going to build this product, is there anything that you had to build for that wasn't necessarily obvious when you were first starting off, but clearly from the get go thinking about enterprise readiness and customer readiness?
Yeah, I mean, a number of things. I think the biggest challenge we see sometimes is you will think that, or there are humans operating already a business function. Let's take HR, right? There are hundreds of HR operations people, thousands sometimes in a large enterprise or customer support. So you will imagine they have a standard operating procedure, they have the data, and it's already functioning, and you're going to go and absorb all that data and train your AI employees or agents, and it will just work. The challenge we see, one surprising thing is, maybe not so surprising, most of the enterprises don't have good data. So you
Huh.
have to correct for that. Or they have conflicting data. Like we work with large enterprises where our AI employee will find out and point out, look, you have like 10 different policies that conflict with each other. And nobody probably looked at it before, or it just somehow got missed. So that's something that we had to kind of think through how we correct for the data anomalies, data kind of dirty data, so to say, and gaps in data, right? And how do we, you know, make humans kind of aware that there are these gaps, and you know, we need your help, because a lot of times people are just operating with uh, kind of knowledge in their head, and what I call tribal knowledge. So very large companies are running very large mission critical things with tribal knowledge, which should scare everyone, because that means tribal knowledge means it's a knowledge in someone's head. If that person, say, leaves the company or sick for 2 weeks or whatever, no one knows what to do anymore, because that's not like codified anywhere, right? And that's the reality in a lot of large enterprises.
Figuring out how to navigate that data and for a startup especially align that with the complexities of at the enterprise level what that looks like is what makes startups like Emma successful and continue to gain momentum and trust with enterprises for sure. Cheryl, what's your perspective on this? Are there any clear signals that you're seeing on the investment side that makes a startup truly enterprise ready versus still in experimentation mode?
Yeah, I think enterprise ready is pretty tricky, actually. To Surajit's point, you need a lot of connections to the data, to the processes. There's also a level of security that enterprise customers are going to demand, as they should. So I think there's those things. Those are just table stakes. I think the hardest thing to get enterprise ready is that a lot of founders are overlooking is how to actually do the change management within the enterprise. And that isn't something that just code can solve, right? And they need to be prepared for the fact that there might be some hand holding. There needs to be some level of give and take. And there may even need to be, whether this is for deploy engineers or you need to start somewhere. And I think a lot of tech companies, startups in particular, have a mentality of if we build it, they will come. And in the enterprise, that just doesn't happen. And so, that is not something that, if you used a more advanced model, you will bridge that gap. Like, you really need to get into that interstitial of the enterprise. And the companies that are that see that and are ready to do that either in their own workforce as the vendor selling to enterprise or in the way that the products are designed are going to be a lot more successful.
That makes a lot of sense. And I'm wondering, pivoting then around this topic into another area that's top of mind for startups in general, especially, or that in that early stage, raising and explaining the why now. And you mentioned like this common thinking of if I build it, they will come, might not necessarily be true all the time. Then when it comes to pitching AI companies today, what do you, Cheryl, think is one thing that founders consistently underexplain or don't put enough emphasis into in that process?
A lot of times they're not founders seem to jump in and be like, "Let me explain what my product does," right? And that's great. I get that. But we're actually at a very interesting nexus point right now with AI because you need to explain to me what your product does, but you also need to explain to me why it's better than perhaps the 30% of the workforce that you might be displacing, right? Like, because these are humans, they are my colleagues, they are my friends, and then there's that piece, and then what will you be able to do beyond what my existing software can do today? Like you have to paint this vision of like almost around the corner of not like in the next 3 to 6 months. Cause like to Surojit's point, the AI needs to learn. So in the first 3 months, 6 months, like it will do all the basic fundamental tasks like better. But I actually need to see a vision of like what will an agentic enterprise look like? And it's actually a little bit difficult to imagine, right? Like, it's like, okay, for every one human employee, I'm going to have 10 agentic employees. And so, like, what does that mean in terms of like how people will interact? And I think that vision is often not completely sold. Like, there's this leap that you expect the investor to just get there. So that's at the vision level. And then at the nitty gritty, honestly, like, I need to understand, like, how are you making all these connectors work, right? Like, like, what do those agentic harnesses look like? And then also, why are you, AI startup, better set up to win? So, like, what are your internal AI stack look like? And why will you move faster and better? And so that piece is often underexplained because uh, I think founders just either assume or they're also building the car as it's moving, right? So,
Sure,
so
sure.
I understand that as well.
That makes a lot of sense. And I'm curious, Sergey, from hearing that perspective from Cheryl, if you can bring us into a little bit of like your approach for Emma in what, in terms of Emma's right to win, has really resonated for you, for Emma, whether it be when you've been pitching for investors or when you've been trying to pitch for enterprise and get enterprise customers. Can you tell us more about how you've approached that?
Absolutely, absolutely. By the way, Cheryl, those points are amazing, and completely agree with everything you said. Um, for us, what has been instrumental is our the trust, and first thing is trust, right? Trust and security. Enterprises want to see, okay, you are compliant with everything. You are compliant with, of course, SOC 2 is par for the course, but ISO 42001 and all the new NIST standards and so on. You can run on our cloud. A lot of customers want us to run on their Azure, for example, so through VPC, not on our cloud. So you have to do a bunch of things. Sometimes they will say you can run in an air-gapped environment. There's a technical term. It means your software cannot access anything on the internet willy-nilly. It has to only access things that are available in that I allow, right, inside my cloud. To do that, you have to write the software in a very special way. So it's actually run in a containerized, air-gapped way. By the way, we are also multi-cloud. So we can run on Azure, where a lot of our customers are, but we can also run on other clouds as well, because a lot of customers have multi-cloud environments. It's not increasingly so. They have multiple clouds within large enterprise. So that's the first, this security, compliance, and ease of deployment. The other thing that really distinguishes us is we are a horizontal kind of platform that can access any And every system out there, we have made it really simple and access in a secure way, permission aware way, right, across the board. That really helps us, right, deploy very quickly anywhere. With the same vein, what we do is we have a small model that sits on top of every model out there, 100 plus LLMs, and it learns automatically how to actually figure out how to execute any enterprise task most optimally across multiple models. And it actually so happens sometimes the newer model is worse than the previous model. Like, Claude 4.7, we are seeing that. It's actually sometimes worse than 4.6. So it's not like, oh, you just upgrade to a new model, it'll be better. Also, if you upgrade to a new model, you may be spending a lot on tokens and so on. We don't charge our customers on token, we charge our customers on outcome-based pricing. That's the last thing, which really helps them understand their cost structure, right? So, okay, you're going to do this task. These are the outcomes. This is the price per outcome. If you don't get the outcome, we don't pay you.
Thank you so much for sharing this insight, Surojit. So what I gather from this is essentially customer centricity continues to be really important, meeting them where they are, understanding where their priorities are, whether it be cost, privacy, security, safety, compliance, and building a product that foundationally, especially if you're selling into enterprises that have big scope and scale, that foundation is there that builds that initial trust and credibility. Before we wrap, I'd love to ask one final question for both Surojit and Cheryl, each of you. If you had to give founders one piece of advice right now, just one thing they should do differently or think about that's incredibly top of mind coming out of this conversation around enterprise readiness, what would that be? Cheryl, let's start with you.
Okay. So I think for me, if you're a founder that's just starting off, I would actually do a lot of needs assessment. I'm a big believer in design thinking. And so I would actually take the time to really identify the customer need, who you want your customer to be, and do a lot of interviews, even before you start writing a line of code, or raise a dime of money, right? Like I would really do that. And then from there, just really sequence out how much money do I need at every stage of my company's development, from prototype to first customer to scaling. I actually think that capital constraint is very valuable in the early days of deciding which products and features you want to go after. And then there is an endless amount of venture money out there. So when it's time to scale, you will have a much more battle hardened product. So that would be my recommendation.
Thank you. Surojit, what about you?
I'll say, look, enterprise software is difficult, as Cheryl was saying. There is, like, of course, you have to earn their trust. And you have to do a lot of work on change management with the customer. It's not just a technology play. And you need to know really what needs you will fill. So I always say, do the hard things first. Sometimes, you say, okay, I'll do, for example, for us, this the work on on trust, the governance layer, etc. We did all that early on. We did all that containerization, the way we'll build the software early on, because it's very hard to do that later on. When you have already built your software in a particular way, you cannot change it overnight. So do the hard things first, to or know when to do it and how to do it. You may actually build a prototype or whatever, but you need to know that to get to enterprise, there's no shortcut.
1000%. That is an excellent note to end on. And honestly, really down to earth, top of mind advice from both of you. And I know that our listeners will find that really valuable for wherever they are in their journey right now. So with that, for everyone tuning in, to close this out, if you're a founder and you're looking to build faster, scale smarter, unlock real pathways into enterprise, I encourage you to apply for Microsoft for Startups. We offer technology, resources, go-to-market support designed to help you grow and succeed. And if you're listening and you're an enterprise customer that's interested in working with innovative startups like Ema, follow and connect with us here on LinkedIn to learn more about how we help bridge this gap. At Microsoft for Startups, we partner with investors like M12 and startups like Ema and many others who are enterprise ready and actively looking to solve real business challenges at scale today. And Cheryl and Surojit, thank you so much again for joining us, and happy Asian American Pacific Islanders Awareness Month again, everyone. Thank you
Yes,
so
great.
much.
Thank you. Bye.